The name of the show says it all. How to get a job in Seattle with our resident expert, Paul Anderson of Prolango, career consultant. Paul, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know, if I keep doing these shows, I'm going to learn something from you. And in fact, the entire public is. So just this show is about jobs, how to get jobs, how to present yourself in such a way, and how to make sure that you are the one that is getting looked at instead of 9,000 other people that may be applying for the same job. Reminder for everyone, you write a column for the Seattle Times, Northwest
Seattle
Jobs.
Times, so it comes out, you'll see it on the Sunday paper, and there's 3 columnists with the Northwest Jobs, so they'll rotate out our faces and our articles. But if you go on northwestjobs.com, there's a column called Higher Ground. Myself and Randy Wood share that, so you can read definitely the content on there as well.
Mm-hmm. And so your whole focus at Prolango is to try to get people positioned to become employed, right?
Transform their career.
Transform their career.
Transform their career. I don't want someone just to find another job, Stan. I mean, eventually you'll find another job. I want someone to get the job they want, that they're excited in, and find it quickly.
Okay. Speaking of excited, there is some exciting breaking news, so to speak, that was really important to you and probably important to anyone who is seeking a new career, and that is LinkedIn now has over 100 million
100 million accounts. Amazing. I mean, I created the slides for my own presentations maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were at 85 million. And then the week after, 92 million, then they just hit 100 million accounts. And LinkedIn is different from companies like Facebook and Twitter, because in Twitter you can have like 5 accounts for one person. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn, their terms of policy is every person can have one. Now you might have 1 or 2 in case they forgot their password, but that's almost 100 million people.
Wow. Now, again, why is this important from a career consulting, career transformation standpoint?
If you're a professional looking for a job today, chances are the decision makers are going to be on LinkedIn. And it's almost like you have access to the company's address book. You know, think about it. You see a job on Craigslist and it says, you know, Boeing is hiring for such and such. You just don't know who in Boeing to talk to. But you can actually go in on LinkedIn, go to the advanced search, type in Boeing, type in that particular hiring manager's title, and you'll be presented with the 12, 15 people that meet that criteria. So you can really narrow down your search and say, if I can talk to some of these people, I can probably get my application in front of them.
Well, so the hiring manager's title that you can find through LinkedIn, explain that to me. How
you can do multiple searches, Stan. You can actually search for education, like who went to the same school I did. That's great ways to build rapport. But the biggest search that we just talked about is you can do a company search. You can say, who is at Boeing today that has a title recruiter? So like I was inviting like companies like Amazon to my career mixer, and I typed in Amazon in the company field. I typed in recruiter or recruitment manager or talent, and I got presented with 91 results, and I sent an email to every single one of those folks, and 8 of them physically showed up from multiple departments. So talk about strategically. Now, you know, Amazon's going to have a lot of recruiters. Expedia in that sense only had 12 results, so you can really limit. And then if you know the title of the hiring manager, saying I'm an engineer, they'd be an engineering manager, or I'm an attorney, they'd be a partner of the firm. You'd be surprised how fast you can narrow down to the few people that are probably going to be the hiring manager.
You know, that's really interesting that you said those numbers, because if you got 8 positive results out of 91 potentials, if you were to look in the in marketing mass mailing field, a 2% return is considered phenomenal.
Yeah.
You got over 4 times that.
That's right.
Over 4 times that just by targeting.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
Something that we do every week here on How to Get a Job in Seattle is we have to do some review. So the economic crisis, the job search has changed. What's changed?
Here's an interesting thing. Whether it was Manpower or Accenture, they just did a recent study, and they said, if you have all these candidates in the marketplace, are we hiring faster today or slower? They realized it's the latter. Companies are hiring slower today. And they asked why, and the hiring manager said, I got Stan. He was amazing. He was exceptional. So who else is out there? So you've gone from maybe companies hiring from 6 weeks to now stretching that out to 3 months. So companies are hiring slower today. That's also why it takes so long. And people are saying, Paul, I went to an interview. They haven't turned me down, but they haven't made an offer either. I don't know what to do. And it's like that's happening to numbers of people, because they're saying, hey, you were amazing, but who else is out there? So they're keeping their options open. So that's really how it's affected the job seeker, but it's also affected the companies, because projects aren't moving as quickly as they can because they're limited to resources. If I only have $100,000 and I can only hire one person, I want to hire the best person, because I'm not going to get additional budget to hire more folks.
Yeah. So I have heard some job seekers tell me, say, well, you know, they're really not hiring anyway. They're just putting those job descriptions out there just to see what they can stir up. Do companies do that?
There are positions called lead generating positions where I'd come up with a generic project manager description and put it on Starbucks' website or Tully's or Microsoft or Amazon, and I would say I want to fill in my database with anyone that's close to this criteria because I might have an opening in 6 months or 8 months. I don't want to start my recruiting from scratch. See, recruiters have a tough time finding top talent. And so what they want to do is they want to get those leads coming in advance, and then they can search their own database. Does that make sense?
Yes, but, you know, the only thing I can say about that is that's just not nice. It's kind of like leading people on.
Leading people on, and understand that was also the importance of why you should be targeting companies today. And if you remember, I didn't say target one company, I said target 10 companies, because if you have 2 or 3 of those employers behaving that way, you still have another 7. And you might say, well, how do I target employers? Target employers that are aligned with your values. Remember, I don't want you to find a job. I want you to find a job you love and you enjoy. What's most important to you? What companies demonstrate that in their culture, their values, and the type of people they look for? Because that's a perfect match.
Okay, something else that we have to review is blacklisted. You know, we talked about this from the very first show, and it just shocked me that I could get myself blacklisted. Again, how can people get themselves blacklisted?
The very first one is to spam your resume. If you send too many applications, and the applications that you're sending aren't perfect fits for the openings that they have, they'll say, let's stop wasting time on Bob or Susan because we've reviewed their application a number of times. They're just not a good fit. Let's stop wasting time reviewing this person. Let's just dump them into what's called the do not hire list.
Really? So companies actually have that, even though the person may be perfectly qualified for the job that comes open in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks, and the applicant sees that and says, well, I got to send my resume in again to get my name back.
But see, that's your fault because you spammed them, so when you do have something legitimate later, they've already mentally written you off. Think about someone coming and ringing your doorbell over and over and over and over again. You're going to call the cops and say, get off my porch. Now, 2 weeks from now, they have something legitimate you want. You don't want to see them again. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that's
Perfect
why
sense.
unless you are a perfect fit for a perfect position, and you can't say, am I a perfect fit? You have to do all those algorithms we talked about in terms of, you know, the keywords matching. Did you get a referral? Did you call them up and find out everything about the job description? Unless you do that, you're missing on opportunities. Now, I talk to companies. Some of them have a very low tolerance. They say, I get 3 applications and they're not a good fit over and over in a row. I'm not going to consider you. Some companies like UW are more forgiving. They're saying, you know, apply to as many jobs as you can within reason, but if you apply to too many jobs and you're just not a good fit, we might not blacklist you. See, they're also afraid of using that term, especially when I'm interviewing them from a journalist perspective.
Yeah, I would
we
think
might not
so.
blacklist you, but we'll look at other candidates first.
I think we call it the bottom of the stack treatment, right? Okay, well that's really interesting, and again, so the advice is to target where you're going and don't just file out the
As soon as you send in a resume, you create a record in their applicant tracking system. And so 1 is good, 2 is good, but if you keep sending in and they keep seeing all these resumes from the same person over and over and over again, it doesn't look good. And the second reason that someone would blacklist you is if you apply to multiple openings. When the Wall Street Journal was interviewing me for that blacklisting article, we talked about this PR firm, and this PR firm had gotten an amazing application from this candidate, and the cover letter said, this is my dream job. In fact, the hiring manager said I was almost in tears when I read it. It was so well written and saying, this is my dream job, and I went to pick up the phone to call her. 10 minutes later, I get another application from that same candidate for another position, completely different than the first one, and she said, this is my dream job. Then again, another application. Within 1 hour, she got 12 resumes, 12 cover letters saying these. Now, how could you possibly have a dream job of a legal assistant, a paralegal job, the janitorial job, project manager, executive director? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So she was targeting everything, and so the hiring manager went from picking up the phone, calling her, to we're not going to even consider this candidate again.
Oh, wow.
Now, we had the opportunity to talk to the applicant and said, why did you do this? And she said, this is a large PR firm. I thought they'd have tons and tons of HR resources, so if I sent this to enough different departments, eventually I'd get somebody's attention. Here's an interesting thing. She did get their attention, but not the attention that you want.
Oh man, that's. I guess she said that she was desperate. Is basically what she was saying.
That's right.
But I do have to go back to this. Unemployment here in the state of Washington, I don't know about other states, but I got to believe it's probably similar, requires you to do something 3 times or
Yep.
make
Every
3
week,
contacts
every
or
week.
file applications or something.
Yep.
So are you saying that it is better if you've got one company targeted or one job targeted to go and file 2 applications for companies in Houston or
With 7-Eleven.
with 7-Eleven?
For companies you don't care about, or maybe you do want to come up with a job search strategy where you are applying to 3 legitimate positions you're really qualified for, but spread them out among many companies if you're doing the work source requirements. Because if you really want to work at Amazon or Starbucks or Weyerhaeuser, you don't want to bombard that same company over and over. Even if you say, Paul, these jobs all look interesting, it doesn't work that way.
Okay, let's go to some new stuff. What do Puget Sound employers want? Are employers here in the Puget Sound different than anywhere else?
Primarily from that word of mouth we talked about. They are very word of mouth driven. In fact, I just was getting my hair cut, and the barber said I was cutting a hiring manager over at Hulu, and he was asking me, I'm having a tough time finding developers. And she said, what's your strategy? And he says, I'm putting up job ads on different job boards, and I'm just getting really bad applicants. And she said, well, I was talking to my client. She had cut my hair a month ago, and she said, I remember him saying employers have an easier time finding referrals. So he said, put me in touch with that guy because I really need his help. It's amazing that employers today, successful ones, are finding talent through referrals. In fact, we're going to talk about White Pages a little bit later. White Pages has a motto that top talent knows other top talent. So they're saying if I can find some good talent, their referral network is also going to be similar quality. Those are the kind of people I want to attract to my company.
And so the moral of the story is that if you're going to go get your hair cut, don't go there to take a nap, be there to be chatty. Is that it? Okay, so we'll go with it. All right, let's talk about White Pages right now.
Yeah.
And I think this overall theme is know your prospective employer. So let's go to the first click. This is, again, specifically about whitepages.com right here in this area. And the first thing is employer referral or employee referral program,
Yes.
something that you just kind of talked about.
So again, White Pages' motto is our employees that we hired were top talent. Therefore, the referrals they're going to send are going to be top talent. It's interesting. They do something different than most other companies. They host an actual LinkedIn luncheon. So they'll bring in 50 employees to a lunch. They'll physically cater to everyone, but they'll say, as part of you coming to lunch, also bring your laptop. Then they have them, while they're eating lunch, they say, go on LinkedIn. We're looking for a Ruby on Rails developer. Type that search string into LinkedIn, and then narrow it down to your network and tell me who comes up in your network that matches those keyword search criteria. And then whoever can come up with the most amount of names at lunch, we'll give you $250 right there, even if we don't hire any of them. If we end up hiring someone in that network, we're going to give you up to $2,500 based on that position, and we'll give you an iPad or a Kindle. You're almost saying, like, Paul, they're almost like bribing employees. Did you know this is a cheaper way? Incentivizing. This is a cheaper way of finding talent than paying a third-party recruiting agency that can charge anywhere from 15 to 35% commission on placing an individual. Think about that. That's $15,000, $35,000 on a $100,000 opening. Here, they give them $2,500 with a $500 iPad for $3,000. They found the best person they were looking for that came out of a referral. Now, here's an interesting thing, Stan. They realize employee referrals are amazing because people that have a social network within the company tend to stay at the company longer. So they end up retaining their employees this way because their friends are also working at that company. The second thing is top talent is very selective on job offers. They don't just take any job offer that comes to them. When you have an employee referral, the employee that referred them tends to sell them on why they should come work at the company. So that actually makes recruiting much easier.
Wow, that's fantastic. We're going to stay with a couple more things about White Pages, but we have to take a break first. We are very fortunate right here on How to Get a Job in Seattle to have Paul Anderson, who is a career consultant, an expert in how you can transform your own career into something that you really, really want. So if you have more questions, go to the website prolango.com. You're going to learn an awful lot. Okay, I want to go back to whitepages.com. We were with the employee referral program. Let's go to the next click if we can get there. Let's go to the next one after that. It's company sponsored. Now, what does that mean?
Company sponsored events. White Pages, how they headhunt is they say we're having a tough time finding Ruby on Rails developers. They just won't apply at the company, and they're also scarce. So what I'm going to do to find these people is I'm going to host a tech talk, and I'm going to bring a Ruby on Rails famous speaker to come speak at our company. The fact that he's speaking, all these Ruby on Rails developers out of nowhere show up because they want to hear this speaker talk. Maybe it's a best-selling author in their industry or someone prestigious. And while these people are listening to the presentation, the HR and hiring managers at White Pages start physically recruiting among the audience.
No.
I mean, talk about headhunting, like true headhunting. And these people might be currently employed and happy at their jobs, but it's almost like commercial and advertising. They're saying, hey, look at the person we put in front of you, and while you're here, let me tell you a little bit about White Pages and why this is a great company, why you should work. And they're actually finding talent that way.
Boy, that's amazing. Let's actually go to the next click, because White Pages sounds like a very interesting company from a developer standpoint. Okay, how do you connect with White Pages? It sounds like
The best
LinkedIn's
thing
way.
that they're suggesting is go on LinkedIn, type in White Pages in the search field, limit the search results by your connection, and if you have a first or second degree connection to White Pages, request an introduction. If you come that way, we're probably going to look at your application.
Now, is this normal for a company, or
Most companies are doing it.
They're doing
we're going
new-
to talk
new
about like
stuff now.
Lumetics is they're doing very similar things.
let's go to Lumetics right now. It's what does this company do?
They do cardiovascular software, as I understand it. So what they do is when surgeons are, need the software to, these guys, they create that kind of software.
Okay, let's go to the first thing that they talk about, or actually that you talked about in an article about them, cover letters. Are they real important? I mean, it's that you
Josh
get the
Joswick,
right word?
which is one of their top recruiters, he's one of their main guys, says most of the cover letters I get from candidates are not worth looking at. They're either templated cover letters that you can get at Barnes & Noble, those little books they sell, $100,000 resumes or something. Don't do that, because you know what? You're not an original idea. 200 other people are using that same exact template.
Oh, so you mean like cover letters for dummies or
Yeah,
something I should
exactly.
use? Okay.
So avoid that. And the second thing is, he says, is that people aren't targeting the cover letters. They're not adding value in the cover letter. What they're sharing is what's already on their resume. We'll already have your resume. He says that if you're going to send me a cover letter, make sure your cover letter adds value. So if you were a stay-at-home mom, explain that. Or if you decide to go back to school, explain that. Or if you have a large employment gap, explain that. Give me more value on the cover letter that's not already found on your resume. That's to be a good cover letter. And then he also says, and other employers here say, if you're going to send me a cover letter, make sure you got my company and my contact information right. People will send a cover letter saying, Dear Amazon, when they're sending a cover letter to Lumetics, because people forget when they're copy-pasting to change company contact, and that just shows you're a desperate job seeker shotgunning to many, many employers. You're not targeting them. Employers want to feel a little love today.
Speaking about that, I kind of wanted to get to the stay-at-home mom. Let's say you've got a stay-at-home mom with maybe 2 children, one of them very young, and the husband's gone like 7 straight days, just nothing, just work after work after work. And the stay-at-home mom, should she say, I need to get out of the house, so I need a job? Is that what she should say?
If her income can be greater than childcare today,
Yeah,
right?
you
I have
got a point
a
there.
good number. It's amazing, Stan. I have a good number of people saying I want to work, but what I'm going to make is what I'm going to pay babysitters or daycare. But if they can make more money, the first thing I would have them do is ideally try to volunteer, strategic volunteer at certain organizations. Anybody will take you for free these days. I mean, you can intern somewhere or volunteer where she can put something on her resume, because the employers don't like this large gap because they're afraid that you're just not fresh on your skills and we got to get you up to speed.
Yeah.
Why should I pay for that? That's really your job.
Makes
That's
sense.
their mindset.
Let's go back to Lumetics, because we talked about the cover letters, and now let's go back. Yeah, apply for everything. If Lumetics has 10 positions, should you apply for all of them?
Absolutely not. In fact, we talked about this.
Yeah,
Get you blacklisted. And so that's another thing that the poor candidates do. Another thing they do with this company is they go on the website and there's company contact information like press@lumetics.com or careers@lumetics or HR. They'll grab any email address they can find and they'll just send their resume, thinking that they're increasing their odds. When you start to spam different departments, a small company is going to start talking. Hey, did you get that email from Joe? Oh, yeah, I got that. Oh, me too, and I did too. Okay, that's poor practice.
Okay, so
Top
that's-
talent doesn't behave that way.
That's the blacklisting, or
That's right.
even if it's not referred to as that.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next one on there from Lumetics was LinkedIn intro. So again, we've talked about LinkedIn before. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. It sounds like we need to talk about LinkedIn a lot.
Yeah, similar to White Pages. If you, it's interesting. These guys have gone a step further. They've actually created a LinkedIn tool on their careers page. So you can click on that and will automatically search LinkedIn for you and say, who do you know that can connect you at the company?
No kidding.
They're making your job easy and saying, hey, just come through a referral. We'll look at you because your referral is probably going to endorse you, or say, no, don't talk to this guy. He's going to do some screening for us. But if you come cold, we don't know who you are because anybody can reach us cold, and we haven't found our best talent that way.
So the hiring manager is making his or her job easier.
That's right. Yeah, and Josh is saying like he's someone to connect to at the company, and if you can have coffee with him or make sure you leave a good impression with him. He's connected to over 90% of the employees at Lumetics. So he could actually become your gatekeeper to any hiring manager within the company.
Wow. Let's go to the next piece, and I think, as I recall, LinkedIn discussion. So there's a difference between the introductions and the discussions?
So how these guys, remember White Pages host Tech Talks?
Mm-hmm.
How these guys headhunt for talent is they join certain medical groups, like let's say the software for medical groups or cardiovascular software, those kind of things. And they watch people talking within those groups. And they see people asking questions, people answering questions, and they see that the top talent is always being a great resource, has this amazing knowledge, and they're sharing it with the community and physically helping each other out. They're like, that's the kind of employee I want working at this company.
Wow. So basically, if you sign up to be in a group on LinkedIn, don't just be a potted plant, actually engage if you're looking to transform your career.
And you want to get headhunted by the company? See what groups Josh is a member of, join those groups and start talking within them. I mean, it's amazing. That's why I stand. If you can target your top 10 employers, you can find out what groups they tend to have in common and start making yourself visible, and then you're getting headhunted versus being the person that's desperately seeking a job.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. Let's go to the next one on Lumetics, because employee referral, we talked a little bit about this with White Pages, but it seems that employee referral makes so much sense.
Is the number one way of getting hired in the Puget Sound. Most companies will bribe you. Expedia got to a point where they would pay $5,000 in bonus, up to $5,000 for a referral. That's how important it is to them. University of Washington was the only one that said we'll give someone a t-shirt, but we'll still give them something to acknowledge their referral. But it's amazing that if you want to get hired in Puget Sound, get to know the people within the company, or ideally use your network you currently have. You'd be surprised, Stan, you'd be surprised who lives next to you. Sometimes your neighbors work at the company because you never have the professional discussion, you'll never know. I was in a street once where I lived next to someone that worked at Starbucks. Across the street was AT&T, Clearwire, Amazon. I'm like, wow, I live in a pretty good street. I would have never, these are all moms and dads. But I mean, you'd be surprised how small the networks are in Seattle. We talked about, we're in a small village that's just bigger, that's it. Huh. And so you'd be surprised that you might be able to find those referrals much quicker than you think.
So how to get a job in Seattle is to have a neighborhood barbecue.
That's right. That was the secret to success.
That's amazing. All right, let's move on to, and this is a review topic from last week. It's the death of the one-page resume. And is that for real? Is the one-page resume gone?
One-page resume makes sense for certain groups. College students, for example. They don't have enough content. They don't have enough experience. One page is pretty good. One page also where people hear the misconceptions, there's something called a bio, a one-page bio versus a one-page resume. The bio makes sense because you're shopping it around to a certain executive circle saying, hey, here's kind of who I am in a nutshell. I'd be happy to send you a resume if you need more details.
Well, let's go to the next graphic, because that's my question. I mean, there's a typical looking resume, but sometimes you don't use the resume, you use a bio. So if
you're an attorney, if you're a senior level professional, director, vice president, CXO, something in those levels, it's inappropriate for you to start sending resumes around because you have you've climbed the corporate ladder enough to at this point you're really making sure that what you bring to the table matches what the employer is looking for. So in those cases, you shop this bio around, which is a one-page summary of maybe the highlights of your education, the type of projects you worked on, the size of budgets you managed, the type of deals you've negotiated. So it's kind of the highlight of you. And then if they need the formal resume, then it becomes more formal, and that's when you'll send a 2- or 3-page document to them.
Okay, so as to when you would send the bio, you meet somebody at a nonprofit deal that you've been to where you've contributed some money, because that happens an awful lot. You met someone and you said, hey, maybe I'd like to talk further. So you send an email to them and say, John, it was great to meet you at the American Cancer Society event. Hey, here's a bio.
Yeah, here's a summary of myself in a nutshell. You had asked a little bit, want to learn a little bit about my experience. That's and it's softer than here's my resume, because John might say I didn't ask for your resume, or I don't have a particular position in mind. But the death of the one-page resume, to answer your question, is if in any other context besides college or sending out that bio, one-page resume doesn't have enough content. And remember, we talked about this, Stan. Resumes are scored based on that content, the keywords, the frequency of mentions, the order of appearance. If you have a one-page resume, there's going to be someone that has 2 pages. He's mentioned project management 3 times. You've only got to mention it once. So he's going to get a higher score. So you'll be in their system, but you'll be way down here.
Because he knew the buzzwords.
That's right.
Okay, so John gets my bio and he calls me up. Basically, it's a phone interview. How do I handle that?
There's a couple types of phone interviews. There's a HR phone interview, which is like, I'll give you an example. Virginia Mason, 300 people will apply for a particular job at a given time. They'll physically call 90 of them, but they'll only bring 5 of them into an in-person interview. So when you get a phone call, get excited, but not too much, because unless you really nail that, you're not gonna get an in-person interview. If it's an HR phone screen, what they're looking for is what is your potential salary range that you're looking for, the kind of benefits. What they're doing is the initial screening to make sure, should I even bother considering you for the next step?
So if I want $90,000 and this job pays,
30,000.
Yeah, okay, so
then you're completely out of their range. So that's one. But there's a second one, is called a technical phone screen, which is when they are serious about you and they're saying, let's make sure you have the technical competencies we're looking for, like the software language, or how to use an Excel spreadsheet, or these kind of things, before I bother wasting my time. Because think about it, every time you come for an in-person interview, those hiring managers have to leave what they're doing and come to interview you, so you're impacting productivity. You only want to do that if you're the right fit. And
you just said the word that we've got a great big huge topic that we're going to get into. It's the interview, the actual in-person interview, and I just got the 1-minute tag. So that means that we don't have time to get to interviews and good questions and all kinds of things like that. So I'll just bet we can handle interviews in the next show.
Sounds good.
Okay, now so we do have a few seconds left, and so at Prolango, what you do is you have mixers, and those mixers bring a lot of people together.
The career mixers are to facilitate relationship building. Because if you're going to get a job, you're going to need to know the right people. I'm going to put the right people in the room. Your job is to show up and start building relationships.
Okay. That's going to be the end of the show. So how to get a job in Seattle, I strongly encourage you. If you haven't seen all of the shows, you can go on Vimeo.com. You can also go to scantv.org. You can find those shows, and you probably want to watch them several times because the advice that you get is so fantastic. For other advice, go to prolango.com, Prolango.com. You're going to learn an awful lot more. We'll see you right here next week on How to Get a Job in Seattle. Take care.